At 9:22 a.m., my son and his wife climbed onto the graduation stage in their perfectly pressed suits and told an entire gym that they had sacrificed everything to raise my granddaughter. At 9:28, the big screens behind them lit up with 10 years of my receipts. At 9:31, the microphone went to my granddaughter, and she said the one sentence I'd been waiting a decade to hear. At 9:35, a polite man in a tie handed my son 2 envelopes that made his smile fall right off his face. I am 69 years old, and that morning, I learned the exact weight of justice. It fit neatly inside a spiral notebook, a thumb drive, and a girl's steady voice. They say you shouldn't spoil the middle of a story, but some truths deserve a drumroll. I didn't plan to humiliate anybody. I planned to be believed. And belief, I found, needs evidence. The first photograph in my binder is crooked because my hands were shaking when I took it. I was 59 then, new to being the center of someone's orbit again. The picture shows a front door at 2:14 a.m., rain snaking down the glass, a 9-year-old girl asleep in my cardigan on our doormat. My granddaughter, Quinn, had waited there for 3 hours with an overnight bag that held 3 t-shirts, 2 mismatched socks, and a note card in her mother's handwriting, staying with Gran for a while. Back Sunday. XO. Sunday became months. Months became years. 10 of them. I didn't push. You don't pull on a sprout and call it helping it grow. You warm soup. You buy textbooks that cost more than your first car. You keep the spare bedroom soft and clean and pretend you sleep through the nightmares that whisper, "They forgot me." You wipe the frosting off a lopsided cupcake at midnight because the bake sale sign-up sheet was buried under mail you didn't see until 11. For a decade, her parents came like seasons that skipped: late December, a brunch in June, a surprise visit with lilies that drooped on the pavement by evening. They were beautiful in photographs. Beautiful people usually are. The filtered light of social media has a way of erasing absence like it's only dust on a lens. Once a year, a car door would slam and Quinn would stand on the porch and tuck her hair behind her ears and ask, "Do I look okay?" She always did. They brought dramatic gifts: a drone she couldn't fly in our small yard, a designer jacket she couldn't wear to middle school without inviting ridicule, noise-canceling headphones when what she needed was a calculator. They brought their smiles and took their photos and promised, longer next time. I didn't argue. I wrote down the dates. I saved the voicemails. Traffic was terrible, work emergency, we'll make it up to her. I didn't tell her I was saving them. Children deserve their illusions as much as they deserve the truth, just not both at once. I taught algebra again, because life circles back with chores you thought you'd retired. I taught her how to make roast chicken and how to iron a shirt without scalding cotton into shine. When she got pneumonia in 7th grade and her temperature climbed to 103, I drove the back roads slick with black ice to the emergency clinic, and when the nurse asked, "Parent or guardian?" I said guardian because I had a letter from a lawyer and a signed consent form in my purse. The consent was 2 sentences long and misspelled my name. It was still the most consistent thing her parents had ever given her. We measured time not by holidays, but by due dates. Projects, exams, playoffs, dental cleanings. The calendar was full of the ordinary: permission slips, a part-time job application at the library shelving returns, the list of chores she wanted to do for rent when she told me she felt guilty about eating my groceries. "Then fix the leaky bathroom sink with me," I said. "We'll count that." We made a graph of her GPA and taped it to the inside of a kitchen cabinet. We added dots after every quarter, watching them climb like the sun through winter. The scholarship counselor said she had a chance at good schools if she could tell a story about resilience. Quinn asked, "What if I don't want to be the girl with sad parents?" I told her, "Then tell a story about your work. Work is a plot twist nobody can take away." I did the math in a different notebook: the price of cleats, the copay for inhalers, the new mattress when the old one sagged like a hammock. I kept every receipt not because I planned anything but because proof is a kind of prayer. 10 years later, it would look like a plan. I wish I were that tidy with destiny. Senior year came with thin envelopes of dread and thick envelopes of hope. It also came with a phone call I should have seen coming. We're planning something special, my son, Ethan said. He has the voice of a man who makes decisions for a living. He manages people. I know because he tells you he manages people 3 times before dessert. Our baby is valedictorian. Can you believe it? I believed it because I watched her write index cards until 2 a.m. and throw them away because none of them sounded like her. I believed it because of the way she stands when she's sure, weight balanced, shoulders down, like a runner waiting for a pistol crack. We'd like to speak during the program, Ethan continued. Say a few words about how we raised her to love hard work. How long a speech? I asked. My hands started their old habit of straightening anything crooked, the table runner, the seam on my sleeve. Oh, nothing big, he said. 5 minutes. 5 minutes is forever when you're stealing. He didn't say raised with you. He said raised her. Her mother, Sloane, chimed in with a smile I could hear through the line. We want to inspire the other parents. The only thing I wanted to inspire was accuracy. Let me check with the school, I told them, and did. The principal, Ms. Rivera, is a thoughtful woman with an uncanny memory for faces. She knows who bags groceries at Thomas's Market, who picks up early on Fridays, who stops by the office with muffins after a win. She knows who signs late passes and who never shows. She knows parents by their shadows. There is no parent speech, she said, apologetic but firm. We have the valedictorian address, the salutatorian, a faculty message, and a short moment to recognize caregivers in general. Sloane says they asked to be added, I said. Ms. Rivera looked down at her desk in that way administrators do when they're measuring their words. They did. We said no. Thank you, I said, and then, without thinking, would you allow a 2-minute video after Quinn's speech, images of her time here? She wants to thank the people who showed up, the school nurse, her English teacher, Coach Salazar, the librarian who gave her her first job. Ms. Rivera smiled slowly. 2 minutes? With the AV Club's help? If Quinn approves the final cut, yes. Send it by Thursday. It wasn't revenge. It was a dedication. It just happened to be the truest kind. That afternoon, I walked 2 blocks to Mr. Mendez's photo shop and asked for a bulk scan of a decade's paper trail. He is the same man who prints the prom banners and the 5th grade science fair ribbons. He is the town's unofficial archivist. He has seen our children through braces and heartbreak and new haircuts. Make 2 sets, I said. 1 for the video team. 1 for me. What's the occasion? He asked. Accuracy, I said. And graduation. He nodded like that was a cause worth the good glossy paper. The video was Quinn's idea once she saw the first draft. Show the softball uniform with the grass stains, she said. Show the sticky notes you left on the stove when I got home late, soup in the fridge, top shelf. Show the electric company bill with paid stamped on it. Show Mrs. Cummins's note from freshman year. If you need to talk, my door is open. Don't show me crying after Mom forgot my 13th birthday. Don't make it a tragedy. Make it true. A decade makes a mosaic. Put enough little tiles together and people can see an image they recognize as a life. The AV kids, blessed, unsentimental, tireless, cut clips and stitch them together with the kind of clarity that comes from being 16 and allergic to lies. They layered stills, the permission slip with my signature, the guardianship letter with Ethan's, yes, but dated and notarized when he had necessary paperwork to file and not much else to do, the ER discharge summary with my address, the library paycheck stub with Quinn's name, the Instagram post of Ethan and Sloane at a tasting menu in Aspen captioned family time on the very night I'd filmed Quinn rehearsing her monologue for drama tryouts. Too harsh? One of the AV girls asked, pointing at the overlap of Aspen and monologue. Leave it, Quinn said, quiet. No captions. People can read. We added voices, short audio clips from people who had stood in our kitchen, Coach's laugh, the librarian's, proud of you, kiddo, my own voice reading off a vocabulary list while stirring a pot because multitasking is a grandmother's superpower. No blame. No accusation. Just texture. Meanwhile, Sloane worked in parallel like a woman planning a gala. She reserved a room at the country club for an after-party, ordered a cake tall as a toddler, hired a photographer who specialized in legacy moments. She called the local paper to pitch a feature. Local couple sees hard work pay off as daughter earns top honor. She did not mention me. She did not mention 10 years. She did mention their nonprofit, their board seats, their brand. I printed the feature email before the reporter could. I don't know why. Habit, maybe. Proof as prayer. There is a certain calm that settles over you when you know the truth will be visible to whoever has the eyes to see it. I slept well the week before graduation for the first time in months. I stopped arranging vases 3 degrees to the left. I ironed my dress and left it on the closet door and didn't check it for wrinkles 24 times. I baked lemon squares for the guidance office and left them there anonymously. I watered the peonies and pinched off the browning buds and thought about how much they looked like tissue paper when they opened, and how even tissue lasts a long time if you fold it carefully. The day before the ceremony, Quinn stood in our hallway and held up 2 dresses. Navy or pale green, she asked. She is quick in the mornings, but slow with decisions that matter. She reminds me of her grandfather when she turns her head to the side and squints. He used to do that with Christmas lights when he wanted to see if the string would work without plugging it in. Navy, I said. You'll like the pockets. She laughed. You always vote for pockets. Pockets are more honest than clutches, I replied, which made no sense and all the sense in the world. She tucked the green dress back into its plastic sleeve and leaned on the doorway. Are you nervous? She asked. About what? I said. About being in the same room, she said. She didn't say their names. Truth is a good room to be in, I said. If it feels drafty, sit closer to me. Graduation morning smelled like cut grass and sunscreen and the metallic tang of folding chairs dragged across a gym floor. It sounded like squeaking shoes and whispered prayers and Mr. Jenkins's tenor warming up for the national anthem. There were parents holding bouquets like trophies and parents holding programs like shields. There were grandparents who cried when they read their names in the program as sponsors of the floral arrangements. I took my seat near the front with a badge that read Guardian. My friend Alma squeezed my hand so hard my rings pressed crescents into my fingers. Stay steady, she said. You've been steady for a decade. Another hour won't break you. The principal's welcome was crisp and kind. The salutatorian quoted a poet. The superintendent made a joke about how long the speeches would be and promised to keep it short. He didn't. He never does. Everyone forgave him because he has that sweet way of patting the air like the extra words aren't his fault. They just came along for the ride. Then Quinn climbed the stairs. You can tell a lot about a person by how they approach a microphone. She didn't rush. She didn't perform. She simply walked like the stage was exactly the size of her courage. Somewhere a soft cry escaped a throat that wasn't mine. Alma, probably. Good morning, she said. I was told to write a speech about gratitude and perseverance. That sounded like 2 different speeches. I tried to write them separately. It didn't work. So this is one story for both. She talked about a town that knows people by the shape of their errands. She talked about teachers who stay late and custodians who unlock doors at dawn and nurses who learn your history the way good librarians learn your face. She talked about the library's break room with coffee that always tastes a little like paper and about how the first book she shelved was a cookbook with a burnt page. She talked about staying, and she talked about showing up. She did not talk about being abandoned. She did not try to make a wound into a lantern. When she finished, the room exhaled. The AV kids were ready. The screen behind her flickered from the school's crest to a black slide with white letters. Thank you to the people who raised me. A ledger of care. We'd argued about that subtitle. A ledger, she'd said, half horrified, half amused. That's so, you. It's true, I'd said. Every life is a ledger. It's just that most of the credits happen in kitchens. The first image was the lopsided cupcake, frosting scraped smooth at midnight. Then came Quinn at 10 with a softball bat on her shoulder, grass stains like badges. The ER bracelet with my birthday listed under emergency contact. The winter coat I bought at the church thrift store and then stitched a lining into because Goodwill deserves second chances. The graph of her GPA rising like bread under a damp towel. Over the pictures, we heard voices. Return your books by Tuesday. Proud of you, kiddo. Hot soup on the top shelf. Coach's whistle and the soft dun of basketballs at 6 a.m. Someone sniffled behind me in a way that meant we were doing something dangerous and gentle at the same time. And then, no narration, no arrows, two posts side by side. Ethan and Sloane's Aspen photo, stemware winking, captioned "Family Time," timestamped 7:14 p.m. And a clip of Quinn at the same minute in our kitchen, hair in a knot, practicing her monologue with a wooden spoon as a fake microphone, my voice off-screen feeding her lines. The audience didn't gasp because there was no need to gasp. They simply did the math that adults do when clocks line up and stories don't. The video ended with 5 seconds of silence and the words, "Raised by a village." "Thank you." Quinn turned back to the crowd. "We have one more thing," she said. "Would the people who did daily rides, sat in bleachers, packed snacks, answered late-night texts, and returned phone calls please stand? We want to see you." It wasn't only me. Parents and step-parents and foster moms and big sisters and grandfathers and neighbors who function as cousins stood slowly like crops rising toward light. Ms. Rivera's hand went to her mouth. The gym looked like a field of witnesses. Ethan was already 3 steps toward the stage, jaw set in that way that used to mean he'd been caught with a second cookie. Sloane's smile had that particular glaze I've seen at fundraisers when a pledge falls short. They had come dressed for a spotlight that was not theirs. They came to rake sunlight. They didn't expect shade. And still I didn't move. It wasn't my show. It was hers. Ms. Rivera stepped forward, voice even. "Please remain seated," she said into her own mic, cutting Ethan's momentum as cleanly as scissors cut ribbon. "We will now proceed with the recognition of caregivers." He sat. To his credit, he sat. Quinn called 6 names: the school nurse, the librarian, coach, her English teacher, the bus driver who let her get on when she'd forgotten her pass in 10th grade because he said, "The only thing you shouldn't forget is yourself." And me. I didn't want to stand. Dignity and hiding often feel similar in the body. Alma squeezed my hand again and whispered, "Steady." So I stood, and the sound that rose from the bleachers was not the roar for a winning goal or the polite applause for a school board member. It was a human sound, grateful and a little embarrassed at itself for being so loud. I have never cried in public, not when my husband died and I carried his boutonniere in my coat pocket for a month, not when the bank clerk told me no for the loan I knew I could pay. But there are days when your heart is a bowl and the world pours. I pressed my fingers to the base of my throat like I could keep the bowl from tipping. The ceremony finished the way all ceremonies do, with the shuffle of programs, the joy of names called, the school song sung slightly off-key. Caps went up. Caps came down. I lost sight of Quinn in a sea of blue gowns and then found her again because she is a person who becomes a landmark wherever she stands. The photographer her parents hired had the square shoulders of a man who knew how to make a senator look tall. He gathered us under a banner the AV kids had made, Class of 20. He posed us in that controlled chaos, graduates in front, caregivers behind, parents to the side, teachers mingled through like ribbon. Ethan maneuvered until he was directly behind Quinn's left shoulder. Sloane tilted her chin the way women learn to do when they're certain their good side has a contract with the sun. Big smiles, the photographer called. Count of 3. On 2, a man in a navy tie and the good shoes of a clerk stepped politely between us. "Mr. Alden," he asked, low enough that everybody heard. He held out 2 thick envelopes the color of oatmeal. "I'm serving you on behalf of the county's Child Support Enforcement Office. And this one is from Revenue and Taxation." Ethan's smile held, to his credit, then faltered. He took the envelopes because he's the sort of man who takes envelopes when they're offered in front of witnesses. Sloane reached for the camera controller, like she could rewind the moment by pressing a button and pretending we all misheard. I did not hire the clerk to ruin a photograph. I hired him because the clerk at Child Support had looked at my binder, at 10 years of math, and said, "We can help." I hired him because I had learned that paper has a different weight when it arrives with a seal. And I called Revenue because I am a patient woman, not an infinite one, and because an accountant at Alma's church had told me, over a plate of baked ziti in a basement that smelled like pine sol, that claiming a dependent you do not support is not simply unkind, it is inappropriate under law. If they used her social security number on their returns without housing her or providing half her annual support, well, the accountant had said, pushing up his glasses, there is a number one calls. I called it. I sent copies, not originals. I kept the originals in my binder because I am old enough to know that systems misfile and that sometimes the answer to "do you have that?" has to be yes right now, not yes when I can find it in the pile that moves every time someone burns toast. The photographer, bless him, recovered like a pro. "Let's take another," he cried. Biggest smiles, class. Eyes to me. His voice wove a web back across the tear in the morning. We smiled. We blinked. Quinn squeezed my fingers. I could feel her pulse, steady as a metronome. At the country club afterward, lemon slices floated in pitchers of water like small suns. The white tablecloths had ironed-in creases that only very young waiters think are inviting. Sloane had arranged a dessert tower that could have fed a regiment and a sign that read Alden Family Celebration. She didn't change the sign after the envelopes. Hope floats on print. People arrived in waves, the ones who always arrive first and hold their plates like shields, the ones who circle the food tables with their eyes and not their feet, the ones who hang back to watch because reaction is story. I do not like big rooms where small cruelties look like manners. But I went. I went because Quinn asked me to, and because public silence can look like shame if you let other people narrate it. Also, because there was going to be a toast, and I needed to hear what they would claim now that the morning had rearranged itself. Ethan clinked his glass. He has a good clink. He was born with a room's attention in his pocket and uses it like a veteran. Thank you all for coming, he began, voice steady. Today is about our daughter's hard work, our community support, and the love of family. It wasn't a lie. It just was not the truth he wanted. Sloane took the microphone with the precision of a baton pass. Quinn, she said, sugar in her tone, we are so proud of the young woman you've become. When we taught you discipline, when we stayed up late helping with science projects, when we built your resilience with our tough love. I don't know if the napkin in my hand tore because I was angry or because paper has a way of breaking under a grip that belongs to somebody who's spent a lifetime carrying sharp things carefully. I don't know if the low murmur I heard came from the table of coaches, all of whom had watched me wait in parking lots through sleet, or from the librarian, who knows the names of people who shelve books at 7 p.m. after practice, or from Alma because she knows the exact note I make when something isn't right. Quinn rose from her chair like she was standing up in a classroom to ask a question. Could I? She asked, and Sloane, who has always mistaken manners for meekness, handed her the mic with a smile that said, "Witness our script continue." I want to be very clear, Quinn said. Her voice did not shake. I am grateful for everyone who showed up for me. If you took me to the dentist, if you signed a permission slip, if you taught me to drive in the church parking lot on Sundays, if you made me soup when I was sick, if you read my essays with a red pen, thank you. She looked at her parents then, and if the room could have leaned forward, it would have. You visited once a year, she said, calm like a doctor reading a chart out loud. In December, usually. Sometimes June. You took pictures and posted them, and I looked at the pictures later and wondered if I'd dreamed the rest of the year. Quinn, Sloane said softly, warning in it. She reached for the mic. No, Quinn said, not loudly but with a floorboard's firmness. She turned now to the room. I do not want to fight. I want the truth recorded in the same place where lies like to pose. So I'll say it once, and then we can slice the cake. The room laughed, grateful for the permission to be human again. My grandmother raised me for the last 10 years, Quinn said. She worked. She worried. She kept lists. She learned the online gradebook system faster than I did. She knows the names of the lunch ladies and the bus drivers and the little boy in my 3rd grade class who loved worms and traded them for the good pencil toppers. She knows because she was there. We could all hear the low hydraulic sigh of an ego deflating somewhere near the head table. The sound followed the laws of physics. It filled the space left by the air that had been hot moments before. I'm not mad at anyone, Quinn continued. I'm busy. I have scholarships to sign and dorm bedding to pick and a life to live. But I am changing my last name. It will be Quinn Alden May. May is my grandmother's name. It is a strange thing to hear your middle name turned into a banner. For a second, I didn't recognize it. Then I did, and the years I had stored like pantry staples, flour, sugar, salt, fell neatly into labeled jars. The room clapped the way you clap when something heavy is lifted off a person you love, and you can't help but cheer, even if part of you knows that someone else just lost their favorite coat of story. Ethan set his glass down so hard the stem shivered. "We have provided support all these years," he said. "Financially, if not physically." Quinn tilted her head. "Dad, the county clerk just handed you notices this morning." He flushed. Men like him often think the rules are suggestions printed in light ink. "We'll resolve it." "I hope you do," Quinn said. "You'll feel better when you're square with the math." Everyone does. The photographer, never one to miss B-roll, aimed his camera at me. I shook my head once. He lowered it like a man who understands consent. The cake was taller than a lie and sweeter than truth, and none of us wanted it. Still, slices appeared on plates because habit is a bold waiter. People ate because sugar is an anesthetic that doesn't require a prescription. The band Two Kids from the jazz program who'll be famous in 4 years played softly, as if volume might disturb the new hinges installed on the afternoon. Sloane cornered me near the hydrangeas, her tone wrapped in velvet. "You've turned her against us." I sipped my water because age has taught me the usefulness of a pause. She turned toward the people who faced her, I said. "It looks similar from certain angles." "She's 19, Sloane hissed. "What 19-year-old knows what's best?" "The kind who had to learn it at 9, I said. "You had no right to involve lawyers," she said. "To call the tax people. To embarrass us." I tapped the rim of my glass with my finger, the way you do when you're thinking about a recipe. "I didn't call to embarrass anyone," I said. "I called because numbers tell a story you can't edit in a caption. If you owe, you pay. If you don't, you show your work, and the answer is the same. The ledger balances." "This is revenge," she said. I looked at the room, the coaches laughing with the librarian, the superintendent thanking the band kids like they'd saved his speech from a worse ending, the bus driver taking a second piece of cake because he'd earned it twice over. "No," I said. "This is record-keeping. Revenge requires heat. This is room temperature." She stared at me as if I had spoken in a language she did not study at her boarding school. "We will be telling our side," she said finally. "You always have," I said. "It's just that this time you'll have to tell it beside ours." She left a cloud of a perfume that cost more than my grocery budget and never smelled like anything edible. I prefer the scent of oranges. They tell the nose what they are with no footnotes. If there is a villain in this story, it is convenience. If there is a hero, it is showing up. The clerk's notices did what paper with seals often does. They pressed on a bruise until the person with the bruise had to adjust their posture. Ethan called twice that week. The first time, he was angry. He listed expenses he'd paid when she was 5 and asked if those counted forward. "They were called gifts," I said. "They were nice. They do not accrue interest." The second time, he was quiet. He asked for copies of what I had submitted, the receipts, the copays, the school fees, the date-stamped attendance logs showing my car's check-in and my signature's repetition, the direct deposits from Quinn's library job, the scholarships with their clear language, primary caregiver, grandparent. "You kept everything," he said after a long silence. I couldn't tell if it sounded like accusation or awe. "I kept what was necessary," I said. "I kept the bedtime stories in my head because paper can't carry that weight. I kept the immunization card because school won't take 'I'm a nice person' in place of dates." "I didn't know," he said. "You didn't ask," I said, and then, "Because I am not out to salt earth, you can start now." He did not become a new man. But he started a different habit. He asked when her move-in date was, what she needed, if he could pay for textbooks this term. "Textbooks are expensive," I said, laughing. "Here is a list." He paid. He didn't pose with them. He didn't post. It was a start. Revenue and taxation took their careful, bureaucratic time. They sent letters. I sent back copies, not originals, with sticky notes that said things like, "See line 12. They adjusted. They were polite. They were slow. I've been around long enough to know that this is what progress looks like when it arrives in an envelope. The internet did what the internet does. Someone's aunt filmed the moment the envelopes were served. Someone's cousin filmed Quinn's name announcement and me standing with the other caregivers. Someone's brother posted a photo of the cupcake on a bulletin board. Strangers argued on platforms designed by men who make money off disagreement. I didn't read the comments. Quinn didn't either, at least not where I could see. Ms. Rivera called to ask if I was all right. "This is why we don't do parent speeches," she said, "Rye. I suppose a rule is only as strong as its most determined exception," I said. "Or its most prepared grandmother," she said. The local paper ran a new feature, not the one Sloan pitched. The headline was simple: a village and a valedictorian. There were two photos, one of Quinn at 10 on a softball field, hair messy, smile steady, one of her at graduation, head high. The crease of her navy dress just barely noticeable because the photographer had caught her at a true angle instead of a convenient one. The article mentioned me twice, once as guardian of record, once as May, who taught Quinn how to see work as a kind of love. I cut it out with more care than the paper deserved, smoothed it, and slid it into a sleeve. Not because I needed it. Because someday my memory will be a pantry with a few mislabeled jars, and I want whoever cooks after me to find something nourishing when they open a door. There is a part of the story that no one puts on a program. It involves unspectacular afternoons. It involves packing a trunk with too many towels and not enough hangers. It involves arguing affectionately about whether a first year really needs a rice cooker and whether a rice cooker is a metaphor for independence. It involves a goodbye that was not melodramatic because we had practiced leaving well for years, me pretending not to watch her bike around the block a second time, her pretending not to look back when she crossed the middle school courtyard. It involves me walking into a quiet house and noticing how silence finds corners faster than dust. It involves putting my hand on the back of a chair and leaving it there for a full minute because sometimes you have to study a piece of furniture to study yourself. It involves a lemon square, the last of the batch, and a cup of tea, and the view from my kitchen window, which has always been the same: a crabapple tree, a fence that needs repainting more than it gets it, and the sky doing whatever it does without asking my permission. It involves the doorbell, which rang at 7:19 p.m. One Thursday, and my son on the porch, hands in his pockets, looking like a man without a script. "I brought the rice cooker," he said, sheepish. "She said she changed her mind." "Of course she did," I said, stepping back to let him in. "She's a person." He handed me the box. "I don't know how to fix this," he said, voice small. "You don't fix it," I said. "You maintain it. Like a fence." He nodded. We stood in the kitchen where so much arithmetic had been done. He looked at the wall where the GPA graph used to be. The taped squares of paint showed like a shadow. "She's lucky," he said. "So are we," I said. He swallowed. "I was a coward," he said. "You were convenient," I said. "Cowardice is a habit. So is bravery. Choose." He nodded again. He did not cry because he is not built that way. He left the box on the table and took nothing because sometimes leaving a house without a trophy is the only honest way to leave. When he reached the door, he turned. "Mom, he hasn't called me that in years when it was just us. He uses May like a man who wants to be modern." "Thank you," he said. "Pay the bill," I said, not gently, not cruelly. "Then you can thank me." If a story ends with paper, it is a poor kind of ending. Paper burns. Paper gets lost. Paper goes out of print. So here's my ending. 2 months after graduation, a scholarship fund appeared at the high school under the quiet name Ledger Scholarships. It awards small amounts for unglamorous needs: a cap and gown, a science fair project supplies, new cleats, a graphing calculator, a prom ticket for the kid who bags groceries until midnight. No gala. No photo op. Just a check and a note: "Thank you for showing up." The fund's first gift came anonymously. If you've read this far, you can guess where it came from. A little of my retirement, a little from a life insurance policy that surprised me by how much it loved me, a little from a legal process that finally collected what had been avoided and turned it into something that looked like an apology with numbers. Every December now, a box arrives at my door. Inside are photographs, dorm rooms that look like cheerful bunkers, stacks of used textbooks, a cafeteria tray, a hand with ink on the edge of it. No captions. The return address changes. The handwriting remains the same. Once a year, because that is our unit of measurement now, but by choice, not neglect, Quinn and I meet at a diner halfway between campus and home. We eat eggs at odd hours because odd hours always tasted like possibility in our house. We talk about her classes like they are countries, and she is a tourist who plans to become a citizen. We do not talk about December visits that came like weather. We talk about weather the way farmers do, curious, hopeful, resigned. At the end of our meal, the waitress brings the check. I reach for it out of habit. Quinn slaps my hand away, laughing. Ledger, she says. This one's a debit from me to you. Ledger, I say back, and let her pay. Sometimes she brings a friend who calls me May like they've known me longer than they have. Sometimes she comes alone and brings a poem she loves or a formula she hates. Sometimes she brings empty hands and asks for a hug and a nap. I have a guest room with clean sheets and a door that was always open to the life we were making and is still open now that we make it in different rooms. I am 69. The peonies still open like tissue paper in June. The hydrangeas still look like a choir. The fence is painted, not because I suddenly became handy at my age, but because a neighbor boy started a business that charges in units of weeding and a sandwich, which happens to be a currency I am rich in. When I walk to the mailbox, I sometimes think of the moment at 9:28 when a gym watched paper become picture. I think of a girl standing like a landmark. I think of a son learning to choose bravery as a habit and a woman who still believes that the truest revenge is an accurate record and the ability to move forward carrying only what you must. I keep the binder on a shelf now where I can't see it unless I'm looking for it. I don't open it often. But when I do, on anniversaries, on days when somebody asks me if love can be counted, I find the lopsided cupcake, the ER bracelet, the permission slip with my name not quite straight. I find a photograph I forgot I had, taped sideways in a hurry, the rain streaking glass, a girl asleep on a doormat in a cardigan far too big for her. There's room in the frame for 2 more inches of porch I never noticed before. Space that looks like waiting and like welcome. That is where the story began. That is where the story keeps beginning. And if you want a tidy moral, here it is, printed in good ink on paper that doesn't smudge. Show up. Save the receipts. Teach the child to keep her own. The rest will balance.
Your watch to the end. Be click here. You will hear another story from my grandma.